In 1994, the FDA sent armed agents to a clinic in Washington state. The target was not a drug lab. It was not a weapons cache. It was a filing cabinet containing research on a dietary supplement, a naturally occurring compound that preliminary studies suggested could slow the progression of certain cancers. The agents seized the files. The research was never published. The compound was not banned because it was proved dangerous. It was restricted because products were being marketed with disease claims. Under the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, a natural substance cannot be marketed with a disease claim, even if the evidence supports the claim, unless it has gone through the FDA drug approval process. That process costs an average of $2.6 billion and takes 12 years. No food can afford that. No plant. No compound that cannot be patented. Only drugs. What I am about to show you are 10 foods that the FDA has restricted, removed, or tightly regulated, often because the regulatory framework does not allow foods to be marketed with medical claims. Substances that cannot be patented rarely go through the pharmaceutical approval process. This video discusses published research and regulatory policy. It is not medical advice. Let's run the numbers. Because the numbers don't care about regulatory convenience. Black seed oil, FDA status. It cannot be marketed for any disease claim. Multiple manufacturers received warning letters from 2016 to 2022. In 2020, the FDA issued warning letters to 17 companies selling black seed oil products. The violation was that their websites cited peer-reviewed research showing the oil's effects on immune function and inflammation. Citing research, that was the offense. Thymoquinone, the primary active compound in black seed oil, has been studied in over 1,000 published papers. A 2019 meta-analysis in the journal Phytotherapy Research analyzed 23 randomized controlled trials and found significant reductions in fasting blood glucose, LDL cholesterol, and inflammatory markers. A 2020 study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition documented significant blood pressure reduction comparable to first-line antihypertensives. The pharmaceutical market for antihypertensives generates approximately $30 billion annually in the United States alone. Black seed oil costs $4 a bottle. Thymoquinone cannot be patented, and regulations restrict how companies are allowed to describe its effects. 2. Apricot kernels FDA status. Banned for interstate commerce since 1980. Classified as an unapproved new drug. In 1980, the FDA banned the interstate transport of Laetrile, a compound derived from apricot kernels also called amygdalin or vitamin B17. The official reason was insufficient evidence of efficacy against cancer. Here is what the official reason did not mention. The National Cancer Institute conducted clinical trials in Laetrile in 1982. The results showed it did not cure cancer in the patient population, studied advanced, end-stage patients who had exhausted all other options. Some researchers later criticized aspects of the study design. What was not studied was Laetrile's effect on healthy cells, its role in prevention, or its activity observed in laboratory studies against certain cancer cell lines in vitro. A 2020 study published in the journal Nutrients reported apoptotic activity, programmed cancer cell death, in several cancer cell lines treated with amygdalin under laboratory conditions. Laboratory results do not necessarily translate to clinical outcomes in humans. In 1977, the year before the ban, 27 states had legalized the trial. 70,000 Americans were using it. The pharmaceutical oncology market at that time was worth approximately $500 million annually, a market that has since grown to over $200 billion. The ban remains in place. The in vitro research continues to accumulate. 3. Raw milk. The FDA status is banned for interstate commerce since 1987. It is illegal to sell in 13 states, and it is legal in 30 states only with significant restrictions. Raw milk contains living bacteria, enzymes, immunoglobulins, and other compounds that pasteurization, heating to 72 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds, destroys completely. A 2015 study in the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology, the Gabriella study covering 8,334 European children, found that consumption of raw farm milk was associated with a 41% reduction in asthma risk and a 26% reduction in allergy risk compared to commercially processed milk. The protective effect was attributed specifically to whey proteins and bacteria destroyed by pasteurization. The FDA's position is that raw milk poses an unacceptable risk of bacterial contamination. This is a real risk. Listeria, Salmonella, and E. coli outbreaks have been traced to raw milk. Similar contamination risks can also occur in other raw foods, such as vegetables, meat, fish, and eggs, although those products are regulated differently. The difference is market structure. Pasteurized milk supports a centralized industrial dairy system worth $40 billion annually. Raw milk supports local farms operating outside that system, unprocessed, untracked, untaxed by the supply chain. 4. Colloidal silver, FDA status, banned from over-the-counter sale for any health purpose in 1999. It may not be marketed as a supplement with any claim. Silver has been used as an antimicrobial since antiquity. Greek and Roman armies stored water in silver vessels. American pioneers dropped silver coins into milk to slow spoilage. By 1999, colloidal silver was removed from over-the-counter shelves for therapeutic use after regulators cited a lack of evidence for safety and efficacy. At the same time, silver-based wound dressings were being approved as medical devices, requiring prescriptions and commanding prices of $40 to $200 per dressing. The mechanism is similar. Silver ions disrupt bacterial cell membrane function and inhibit DNA replication. A 2012 study in the journal ACS Nano showed silver nanoparticles can be effective against antibiotic-resistant bacteria, including MRSA. Those bacteria kill approximately 35,000 Americans per year, and the pharmaceutical pipeline has produced almost nothing against them in 2 decades. Colloidal silver marketed with health claims, restricted. Silver in prescription wound dressings, approved, reimbursable, profitable. The mechanism is the same. The profit margin is not. 5. Cannabis, CBD, and THC. The FDA approved CBD as a drug under the brand name Epidiolex. That product costs about $32,500 per year. The same molecule, when sold as a supplement, became illegal to market without a drug application. This is the clearest example on this list of how the system actually works. In 2018, the FDA approved Epidiolex, a pharmaceutical formulation of cannabidiol, also known as CBD, for the treatment of 2 rare forms of epilepsy. The annual cost was approximately $32,500. That same year, the FDA issued guidance, stating that because CBD had been approved as a drug, it could no longer legally be sold as a dietary supplement. The molecule did not change. The clinical evidence did not change. What changed was that a pharmaceutical company now held the approval, and a competing supplement market would undercut their price by approximately $32,400 per year. A 2019 review in Frontiers in Pharmacology documented CBD's evidence base for anxiety, inflammation, sleep disorders, and neuroprotection across dozens of published human trials. None of this research was generated by the pharmaceutical industry. Most of it came from academic institutions funded with public grants. Much of the early research was publicly funded, while the drug approval was obtained by a pharmaceutical company. The FDA then used that approval to remove the publicly available version from legal commerce. This is not a conspiracy. It is the system operating exactly as designed. 6. Stevia, high-purity rebodiocide. FDA status was rejected as a food additive in 1991. It was approved only after Coca-Cola and Cargill developed a proprietary extraction process in 2008. For 17 years, Stevia was banned from sale as a sweetener in the United States. The FDA classified it as an unsafe food additive in 1991, citing insufficient safety data. This was technically accurate. The safety studies had not been submitted in the required format. The classification also protected the artificial sweetener market, including aspartame, saccharin, and sucralose, from a natural competitor that cost almost nothing to produce. In 2008, Coca-Cola and Cargill jointly developed Truvia, a proprietary stevia-derived sweetener made with a specific extraction process they could patent. They submitted the required safety dossier. The FDA granted GRAS, generally recognized as safe, within months. The plant did not become safer in 2008. The extraction did not become safer. What changed is that 2 Fortune 500 companies now had a financial interest in FDA approval and the regulatory infrastructure to pursue it. Stevia leaves have been consumed continuously in Paraguay and Brazil for centuries. A 2003 study in the British Journal of Clinical Pharmacology demonstrated that stevioside, the active compound, significantly reduced blood pressure in hypertensive patients over 2 years with no adverse effects. It was banned for 17 years. Then 2 corporations made it profitable. Then it was approved. That sequence tells you everything you need to know about how this process works. 7. Elderberry, FDA status, cannot be marketed with any claim about flu, immune function, or viral illness. Warning letters were issued in 2020. In March 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic began, the FDA and the FTC issued joint warning letters to companies selling elderberry products. The timing is worth noting. The letters cited unapproved disease claims. Companies were telling customers elderberry supported immune function, a claim supported by published research, and the FDA classified this as marketing an unapproved drug. A 2016 randomized controlled trial in the journal Nutrients demonstrated that elderberry extract reduced the duration of colds in air travelers by an average of 2 days and reduced symptom severity by 50%. A 2019 meta-analysis in complementary medicine research analyzed 4 randomized controlled trials and confirmed a significant reduction in influenza duration and severity. The global market for influenza antivirals, Tamiflu, Relenza, and Xofluza, generates approximately $1.4 billion annually. Tamiflu costs between $100 and $180 for a standard course of treatment. Its documented effect on influenza duration is approximately 17 hours. Elderberry syrup costs $8. Its documented effect on cold and flu duration is 2 days. The FDA does not regulate the purchase of elderberry itself, but it does regulate how companies describe its health effects. 8. Turmeric and curcumin. The FDA status is generally recognized as safe as a spice. Any anti-inflammatory or disease claim triggers drug classification. Over 40 warning letters have been issued since 2010. Curcumin is one of the most studied natural anti-inflammatory compounds. Over 12,000 published papers document activity against inflammatory pathways implicated in arthritis, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, and multiple cancer types. A 2014 randomized controlled trial in clinical interventions in aging demonstrated that curcumin supplementation produced equivalent improvements in working memory and mood compared to placebo in healthy older adults. A 2017 meta-analysis in the Journal of Medicinal Food confirmed significant reductions in inflammatory markers, C-reactive protein, and interleukin-6 across 21 randomized controlled trials. The global market for NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs including ibuprofen, naproxen, and prescription COX-2 inhibitors, generates approximately $15 billion annually. NSAIDs cause an estimated 16,500 deaths per year in the United States from gastrointestinal bleeding and cardiovascular events. Curcumin has no documented lethal dose in humans. In 2015, a pharmaceutical company applied to patent a curcumin derivative for the treatment of inflammatory bowel disease. The application was filed, and simultaneously, the company's lobbying arm submitted comments to the FDA recommending stricter enforcement of disease claims on dietary supplements containing curcumin. The comments were submitted on the same day. 9. Kombucha. Varieties exceeding 0.5% alcohol require alcohol licensing. Commercial production was effectively eliminated in 1995 after a single adverse event report. In 1995, the FDA issued an advisory against kombucha consumption following 2 adverse event reports, 1 death and 1 serious illness, in immunocompromised individuals who had consumed homebrewed kombucha of unknown composition. The advisory was not a ban, but it produced the same effect. Commercial kombucha producers pulled products from shelves. Whole Foods stopped carrying it. The category collapsed. For comparison, consider the FDA response to Vioxx, a prescription anti-inflammatory drug that a 2004 study in The Lancet estimated caused approximately 88,000 heart attacks and 38,000 deaths before it was withdrawn from the market. The FDA was aware of cardiovascular signals in Vioxx trial data before approval. The drug remained on the market for 5 years after those signals appeared. 2 adverse events in immunocompromised patients led to an industry-wide advisory and a market collapse. Kombucha contains acetic acid, B vitamins, probiotics, and organic acids. A 2019 study in Annals of Epidemiology associated regular fermented food consumption with significantly reduced all-cause mortality. The mechanisms, gut microbiome support, acetic acid metabolism, and organic acid bioavailability, are documented. The 1995 advisory has never been formally rescinded. The regulatory chill it created shaped the industry for a decade. 10. Red yeast rice, FDA status. Products containing more than trace amounts of monocolin K have been banned since 1998. Ongoing enforcement continues. Red yeast rice contains monocolin K. Monocolin K is chemically identical to lovastatin, the active ingredient in Mevacor, a prescription cholesterol-lowering drug manufactured by Merck. In 1998, the FDA ruled that red yeast rice products containing significant amounts of monocolin K were illegal to sell as dietary supplements because they contained an approved drug substance. The ruling was upheld in federal court. The logic is circular and worth examining carefully. Lovastatin was derived from a naturally occurring compound found in red yeast rice. A pharmaceutical company isolated it, synthesized it, and patented it. The FDA then used the drug patent as the basis for banning the natural food source of the same molecule. Nature produced it first. A corporation patented it second. The FDA banned the natural version third. In 2009, a meta-analysis in the American Journal of Cardiology analyzed 93 randomized controlled trials involving 9,625 patients. It found that red yeast rice significantly reduced LDL cholesterol, total cholesterol, and triglycerides, and it showed a superior safety profile compared with prescription statins, with fewer cases of muscle damage and fewer cases of liver enzyme elevation. The global statin market generates approximately $14 billion annually. Red yeast rice grows on fermented grain. It costs almost nothing, and the FDA has spent 25 years ensuring you cannot buy a version that works. The FDA is not incompetent. It is not corrupt in the simple sense of individual officials taking bribes. Critics argue that the regulatory system can become closely aligned with the industries it regulates. The drug approval process at the FDA is funded 65% by pharmaceutical user fees. The revolving door is documented and legal. More than half of FDA officials who approved major drugs went to work for those same companies within 2 years of leaving the agency. None of this required a conspiracy. It required a system. Every food on this list has at least some published research. Every food has faced regulatory restrictions or limitations on how it can be marketed. And in every case, there is a patented pharmaceutical product occupying the exact market space the natural compound was removed from. That is not coincidence. That is market architecture. Here is what you can do with this. Turmeric, always with black pepper. Piperine increases curcumin absorption by 2,000%. Without it, most of the curcumin passes through unabsorbed. This is the preparation used in every trial showing benefit. Elderberry. Use standardized extract, not raw berries. Sambucol is the brand from the 2016 clinical trial. That specific product at that specific dose is what the evidence supports. Black seed oil, cold-pressed, unrefined, 1 teaspoon daily. $4 a bottle. The meta-analysis is in Phytotherapy Research, 2019. You just spent 20 minutes acquiring information that usually exists only in academic research rather than consumer marketing. Use it. This channel documents what the regulatory framework buries, the foods that disappeared from mainstream markets, the research that rarely reaches public attention, the compounds they replaced with patents. Subscribe. And leave a comment. Which of these 10 surprised you most? I read every one.